You might think you know Henry VIII, the infamous king with 6 wives and founder of the Church of England. But brace yourself, because the truth about him is far more disturbing than any schoolbook ever revealed. This was a monarch so morbidly overweight, he relied on mechanical aids to move. A man whose leg wounds reeked so badly that servants fled in disgust. A ruler whose decaying body was so far gone that his coffin literally burst open from the gases of decomposition. Prepare to uncover the twisted truths about Henry VIII that make Game of Thrones look tame, from his grotesque dining habits to his obsessive security tactics, from the horrors he inflicted on his wives to the nightmarish condition of his body in old age. These revelations will shatter everything you thought you knew about England's most notorious ruler. His physical condition was a total catastrophe. Let's begin with the most appalling detail about Henry VIII. By the time he died, he was virtually a walking corpse. His appearance had become so repulsive that even his own attendants were left traumatized. His waist was 54 inches, larger than many people's full height. He tipped the scales at about 400 pounds during a time when most men barely weighed 140. But here's the really horrifying bit. It wasn't just fat. His legs were riddled with gaping, infected sores that never healed. These weren't minor injuries. They were gory ulcers that leaked pus and decomposing tissue constantly. The odor was so overpowering that courtiers covered their faces with perfumed cloths before approaching. Some accounts even claim the stench reached across multiple rooms. Servants had to draw lots to decide who would dress him, since being near his wounds was seen as a punishment. And believe it or not, it gets even more disturbing. Modern doctors believe Henry sustained a traumatic brain injury in a jousting match in 1536. This wasn't a mild concussion. He was knocked out for 2 hours, which, in those days, was basically a death sentence. That head trauma likely caused extreme personality shifts, helping explain his descent from a relatively balanced young monarch to the unhinged, furious tyrant he became. This sort of detail never appears in your average history class, but Henry likely suffered from Cushing's syndrome, which could explain his uncontrollable weight gain, violent mood swings, and those revolting leg wounds that never healed. His physicians were so terrified of him that they wouldn't dare suggest he was seriously ill. Questioning the king's health bordered on treason. The man who claimed divine authority over England couldn't even manage his own bodily functions. Toward the end of his life, Henry had to be followed by attendants carrying special chairs because he couldn't walk from room to room without soiling himself. And this is the same monarch who ordered executions for minor insults. Yes, most people know Henry VIII had 6 wives and ordered 2 of them beheaded. But what those women actually went through was far worse than simple execution. They endured psychological torment that rivals what modern serial killers inflict. Consider Anne Boleyn. Her death wasn't just a whim. Henry orchestrated a calculated setup, including a coerced confession from her musician, who, under torture, admitted to adultery with her. And the sickest part? Henry made Anne witness the execution of 5 men, including her own brother, accused of sleeping with her. She had to stand and watch innocent people be slaughtered, knowing she'd be next, all because of her husband's delusions. Catherine Howard had it even more tragically. She was practically still a teenager when Henry married her. After discovering she'd had previous relationships, he didn't just have her executed, he made it law that marrying the king without disclosing past sexual activity was treason. Imagine being so vindictive you rewrote national laws just because your young wife wasn't a virgin. But the real torture came in the mind games. Henry would lavish his wives with affection one day, then isolate or threaten them the next. Catherine of Aragon spent her final years under virtual house arrest, barred from seeing her daughter Mary, while Henry spread false rumors that she was insane. She died alone, possibly poisoned, sending heartfelt letters Henry never even read. Here's a fact that'll twist your brain. Henry made his wives sign papers agreeing to their own divorces or annulments. Anne of Cleves was so terrified of him that she signed off on a fake annulment just to escape with her life. She had to act like the marriage never occurred, and even thanked him for sparing her. And Jane Seymour, the so-called fortunate one who died naturally, lost her life after giving birth to Henry's son. Henry had already started eyeing his next wife before Jane's body was even buried. Just 9 days after her funeral, he began plans for another marriage. To him, people were throwaway items, and these women had no way out. Divorce was unthinkable. Escape meant death. And defiance didn't just cost your life, it endangered your entire family. Think competitive eating is wild today? Wait until you hear what Henry VIII consumed every day. He didn't just eat like royalty. He ate like a man trying to starve an entire country by himself. Henry devoured roughly 5,000 calories daily. For comparison, that's over twice the recommended amount for an active adult. And this man could barely walk. But it wasn't just the volume that was shocking, it was the sheer absurdity of his meals. One of Henry's typical feasts included a whole roasted pig, several chickens, different kinds of fish, piles of bread, and more wine than a small ship could carry. His kitchen produced more than 800 dishes a day, just for the royal household, and Henry personally sampled dozens of them. There were over 200 full-time kitchen workers to satisfy his cravings. But the weirdest part? Henry thought certain foods held magical powers. He believed swan meat gave him grace, venison improved his hunting skills, and oysters boosted his sex life. So he binged on these items like they were medieval miracle cures. His dining habits were completely bizarre. Every bite had to be tasted by multiple servants first to check for poison. And he was so paranoid, he made them wait 30 minutes to make sure they didn't drop dead from delayed toxins before he'd touch a single morsel. Every meal became an elaborate show. He dined in front of hundreds of courtiers, and the process could stretch on for hours. Picture this: a bloated, decaying king slowly gorging himself on enough food to feed a village, and everyone around acting like this was totally normal. And here's something no history class tells you. Henry banned certain foods from his table, not because they were bad for him, but because they were too common. Simple staples like turnips and barley were forbidden at court, even though those would have been far healthier than the heaps of meat and sugar he lived on. What's really insane? Even as his body deteriorated, Henry kept eating more, convinced his royal blood made him immune to the consequences of his own gluttony. Henry VIII's paranoia went far beyond basic distrust. He turned his kingdom into a real-life surveillance nightmare. In his final years, Henry was so certain people were plotting against him that life at court became unbearable. Start with his sleeping arrangements. The king kept loaded crossbows next to his bed and knives under his pillow. That wasn't enough. He also stationed armed guards in his bedroom who watched him as he slept. Imagine being so afraid of being killed that you needed a personal witness squad while you napped. His palaces became fortresses. He ordered hidden hallways installed throughout every residence, not for privacy or luxury, but to make a quick getaway in case of attack. He had peepholes built into walls so he could secretly observe his courtiers, and he installed crude listening devices in chambers to spy on private talks. Here's where it gets totally unhinged. Henry set up a spy network whose job was to monitor his other spies. He had informants watching informants, creating this toxic loop where no one could trust anyone. Court life turned into a psychological minefield. Saying the wrong thing to the wrong person could mean death. His food paranoia hit military-grade levels. Not only did he use multiple food tasters, but he insisted meals be prepared in sealed kitchens under guard supervision. Every ingredient, from salt to water, had to be tested by separate people. He was so obsessed with being poisoned that preparing his dinner resembled a tactical operation. Henry even suspected his own children of treachery. He had spies tail Princess Mary and Princess Elizabeth, because he thought they were planning coups. These were just kids, and he treated them like enemy agents. His paranoia got so wild he began killing people for things they hadn't even done. He'd order someone's execution based on a dream, or because someone might betray him someday. The Tower of London overflowed with prisoners guilty only of standing too close while Henry spiraled into suspicion. His fear infected everyone. Nobles betrayed each other, servants sold out their masters, and nobody felt safe. You'd think the madness ended when he died, but no, even death didn't stop Henry from being a disaster. In his final days, Henry had grown so massive he had to be carried in a specially built chair with wheels and pulleys. And the sick part? His wounds were so infected that chunks of dead flesh literally fell off his body while he was being moved. Servants had to walk behind him with cloths, cleaning up bits of their rotting king as he dropped them on palace floors. His actual death was straight out of a horror flick. His body had ballooned so grotesquely that his skin stretched to a shiny sheen. The smell was so awful that even his seasoned doctors had to leave the room to vomit. When he finally died, nobody wanted to approach his body to confirm it. But it gets even worse. Henry's corpse was so full of decomposition gas that his coffin had to be specially reinforced. They wrapped his body in lead and boxed it in layers of wood, hoping that would keep things contained. They were wrong. Very, very wrong. On the way from London to Windsor, something unthinkable happened. The coffin exploded. The gas buildup from his decaying body blew the lid open, spraying royal remains inside the hearse. The smell was so unbearable that the procession had to stop as servants scrubbed the interior with rags and buckets. And here's the part that will haunt you. Dogs were reportedly seen licking Henry VIII's leaked remains off the road. The man who ruled by divine right ended up feeding stray animals on the roadside. Even his burial was a mess. The grave had to be dug extra wide to fit the bloated coffin, but the earth kept collapsing under the weight. It took multiple tries just to bury him. And the madness didn't end there. For years, people claimed to hear strange sounds and smell foul odors from the tomb. Some blamed ghosts, but historians suspect more decomposition gases. Your history class won't mention this, but the trauma of dealing with Henry's corpse was so extreme that several servants who handled it died shortly after, likely from infection. So, now you've seen the truth. Not the sanitized image of Henry VIII, but the grotesque reality. A collapsing man whose body betrayed him as brutally as he betrayed everyone else. A king so warped by fear and excess that he turned a powerful empire into his personal nightmare. In the end, the mightiest man in England became a prisoner inside his own rotting flesh. And even in death, his chaos lived on. His real legacy isn't just the church or his many wives. It's a chilling reminder of how unchecked power can transform a person into a true monster.